I was like not great at academics at all, which kind of surprising if you look at the archetype for who ends up in executive roles. So I was not good at academics at all. And he was like, this is going to be hard for you if you don't fix your thing. And obviously, like imagine South Indian math teacher explaining this to you. You're like in front of your class, you're in front of a class that you barely know. You just started. This is my second or third month there. One of the things I saw was I had to take a pay cut, which is what I meant by moving sideways, right? So I optimized for the title and not for the salary. So I was like, okay, I'm going to sacrifice pay here, but I get the title, I get the experience, and then I can use that as a jump off point for future career. I look at it as, can I recover from this? Basically, is the way I think about it. So leadership, a lot of time people feel that it comes with a sense of inbuilt authority. And that is true only to a certain extent, right? You can't just go change your product quickly. You cannot go change pricing quickly. You cannot change the team quickly. You cannot change your managers. You cannot change your stakeholders. People imagine leadership to be you come in and you make a new rule and new laws and things will become better, right? And people will praise you for the changes you've made. But the reality is,
All right, welcome to Beyond Brilliance podcast. I'm your host, JK. Thank you for joining us. We sit down with leaders in tech, data, and AI to share insights, actionable strategies for building a future where human ingenuity meets cutting-edge technology. I'll pass it over to my co-host, Jay, to introduce our guest for today.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Today we've got Mahesh Guruswamy with us, a tech leader who's seen it all from writing code at Amazon to leading product and engineering at Kickstarter. He's also the voice behind the book, How to Deliver Bad News and Get Away with It. And he also has a newsletter, which is The Sensible Manager. Mahesh isn't about just frameworks. He's about real world application of survival skills and tech leadership. Mahesh is calm, sharp, and always moving forward. You're going to love this episode. Let's dive in. Hey, Mahesh, I was actually looking at your LinkedIn to source more information about you before getting started with this podcast of yours, right? So I read this line which says, I was told I was average. They weren't wrong at first. Who told you that? And what was your reaction to that? And what was going through your head at that point in time?
so if I try to think back to the exact moment like a person said that to me, it was my maths teacher in 11th standard, which is high school, right? So I just moved schools, and this math teacher, well, rightfully so, right? Because I was like not great at academics at all, which kind of surprising if you look at the archetype for who ends up in executive roles. So I was not good at academics at all, and he was like, this is going to be hard for you if you don't fix your thing. And obviously, like imagine South Indian math teacher explaining this to you. You're like in front of your class, you're in front of a class that you barely know. You just started. This is my second or third month there, and he was like, "Yeah, you're not going to go anywhere, in the world. You have to like fix this, or you're going to be in deep trouble." And in that moment, I made a decision that this is not going to define my story. And to be clear, like I mean, I don't know if I was thinking about it in the exact same way, but the part of me was like, okay, this can't be my story, right? So, and one of the deliberate decisions that I made early on in my career, like right after like high school, is like I have to own my destiny. I can't let circumstances control it. I have to own my destiny, which a part of it means being in a position where you can control it, which is moving out of India, right? So I don't know about your backgrounds, but where I'm from, like there's like a lot of voices around you, right, who tell you what to do or how to like look at the world or uh, kind of professions to follow, and then naturally the comparisons also come, right? Like this person is doing this person's a doctor now, this person is blah blah blah. But I really believed from a very young age that to be successful, I have to like control my own destiny. I have to kind of figure out what to do, and I have to like live with the decisions that I make. And that's what ended up with me coming to the States. And that has defined my life in its entirety so far, right? I tend to value my freedom and time quite a bit because I want to like live life on my own terms and make decisions on my own terms. And and take risks on my own terms. But yeah, but specifically to your question, the person who set the average line was my math teacher from 11th standard.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think we all get told that at several points in our lives, and I really personally reflect with the thing that you said. It's in my control, and I want to determine my destiny. Right? That's very very resonating with me. So just to how long did you carry that label, and when did you break out of that mold?
That's a good question. So I kind of carried that through my master's too. I wasn't really good at my academics in master's. I wouldn't call, I mean, I graduated with like a decent score and all that, but I wouldn't put myself like at the top of the class. When I started working, that's when I figured out that, the rules don't apply as much as they did up until that point. So what I mean by that is, especially that's true in America, which is what I love about this country, is you're given a problem and you can solve it any way you want as long as it kind of fits into the sandbox of what the company or the organization is trying to do. And your speed is valued, right? So if you're trying to solve like a math equation, you have to like follow the steps, you have to show the steps, you have to explain that you understood the steps, and then you'll get like full points for it, right? But if you're solving a tech problem, you can do it in your own way. You can take the non-traditional path, you can take, whatever seems intuitive to you and solve the problem. And once I started doing that early on in my career, people started noticing, people were like, "Oh, nobody has solved this way. So this is the first time I'm seeing somebody solve this puzzle this way." And that was one interesting data point for me early on. The other thing I did was optimize for speed. So I wasn't the type of engineer who would sit on things and like kind of figure out what is the best solution for this. I would say, as long as I understand what point A and point B are, I'll say, okay, how do I cross that as quickly as possible? Because I understood like technology, software development is not like building a house. It's not like physical things you have to like replace, which is going to be expensive, which is going to take time. Software engineering is different. So if this doesn't work, you can go back and change it. So when I started getting validation from my peers, from my bosses, from my team that, hey, we like the way you move, which is move quickly, get stuff done, optimize for delivery, and you don't have to have quote unquote architectural purity to solve problems because in the end, that didn't matter that much. And that's when I started to realize, okay, maybe I can, you know, be like reasonably successful here.
Yes, absolutely. A follow-up to that, I also stumbled upon this and I quite like what I saw. You talk about moving sideways, diagonally, and sometimes even backwards. Most career advice is about climbing vertically. When did you realize the game was different?
So early on when I was an engineer, this is back when I was at Fidelity Investments, I started to unofficially manage teams or like small teams, like a small squad. And the feedback that I got from my bosses back then was, "You're really good at managing people." And what they meant by that is you can easily kind of get this group to get aligned on a specific goal, right? Which is essentially what management starts with. So then that kind of bug entered my head. It's like, okay, I want to like explore this path. I want like become like an engineering manager, and it is very hard to make those jumps, outside of the vertical progression within a company, right? So it's much easier to stay in the company, go up, and then go laterally, right? But it is very rare, very hard to like make those moves laterally. So what I did was I started to like start looking outside, like, hey, is there like a role for an engineering manager outside? One of the things I saw was I had to take a pay cut, which is what I meant by moving sideways, right? So I optimized for the title and not for the salary. So I was like, okay, I'm going to sacrifice pay here, but I get the title, I get the experience, and then I can use that as a jump off point for career growth. I did the same thing when I decided that I wanted to become an executive. I said I want to explore the CTO path. I want to like get there, and I didn't like just like start off like looking for CTO jobs. I was like, okay, the skills required for a CTO is managing multiple teams, like being in the room when you make strategic decisions, board interactions, like all that sort. So when I moved from Amazon, everybody was like, "Why are you leaving Amazon? It's a fantastic company." I was one of the early members of the Alexa team, which was on fire back then. Maybe not, but back then it was very, very big and very popular. Everybody's advice of, "Why are you leaving Amazon? Like, you can stay here. You can, like, make a lot of money. Amazon stock is still doing good." But the difference for me was, well, I can spend 10 years at Amazon, become a VP, or I can do this lateral move to Smartsheet, take a director job, and short circuit my path to an executive role. And that's what I ended up doing. Smartsheet ended up being a huge benefit for me because the company went public 6 months after I joined. And I jumped from senior director to VP, and I used the VP to get to CTO and used CTO to get to where I am now. So in general, I don't believe in standing still. So I believe in like just keep moving, and when opportunities come up, you just take advantage of them.
You provided a great framework, actually. One of the things that would benefit the audience that listen to this podcast is how do they spot the difference between a smart lateral move versus just being stuck?
I would say if you optimize for learning or earning. So either you like learn something from the equation, which is what I did early on. It was like, okay, this is like $20,000 less than my current pay, but I'll learn new skills, or you're optimizing for earning. I want to like make money, so I'm going to like optimize for that. And if you're early on in your, I mean, it depends. It's personal choice, like decide like what they want to do. But in general, you mentioned like vertically climbing the career. I would look at it as like a lattice. And sometimes you go up, sometimes you go sideways, sometimes you go diagonal. And optimize for, if you're like quick career growth, then I would say optimize for learning, because that's what will get you to your next role quickly. So sacrifice pay for learning a new skill. I would say that another important thing for tech growth is spend time at a big company, because you'll learn skills that you wouldn't in like smaller companies. So if I hadn't spent time at Amazon, hadn't spent time at Fidelity, I would consider Smartsheet also like a big company. Like I wouldn't be able to like do this job successfully, because some of the frameworks you learn, it's important for you to like spend time at a big company. I would say for young graduates, do not spend your entire career in a big company. People end up spending 10, 15 years fresh off college into a big company, and you get locked into a way of thinking and a way of solving problems. So I would definitely not recommend that. Spend like 5 years, get the experience, and start moving. Because like I've seen like people who come from Google and Amazon into smaller companies and like really struggle, right? Because smaller companies don't have the frameworks, don't have the tooling, don't have all the things that they used to in like large companies. So, but yeah, spend some time in a large company, optimize for learning, and sometimes sacrificing, your salary is not a terrible thing.
Yeah, actually, it's a perfect segue to the next segment of our episode, right? I wanted to explore a little bit about the risk-taking framework. How do you differentiate like that you're making a smart risk here, or if it's just a reckless optimism? How do you make that judgment?
The way I think about it is maybe I am a little too open to risk. I look at it as, can I recover from this? Basically, is the way I think about it, right? So I'll give a concrete example. So I came here on a student visa, and then I went to like a work visa, and then green card and all that, right? So back in the day when I was on a work visa, you're supposed to stick around in the company, right, until you get to the permanent residency space or spot. I did not believe in it at all, because I don't want to spend. So it's like a trade off, right? Either I get my residency quicker or I grow my career quicker. I optimized for career, because I was like, okay, what will I do if I get my permanent residency quicker, right? Like nothing is different besides another tech job. Why not optimize for growing? And that was a risk that I took that nobody was happy with, including my parents were like, why are you doing this? You should just stay in your place until you get your green card, right? But life is too short. Like as I said, time is the only currency we have. And I wanted to use it appropriately. And so, and I kind of compare myself with other people who've gotten their green cards and citizenships faster, much faster than I have. but there's no like meaningful difference in like quality of life in the end, right? So I was like, okay, I'm not going to optimize for finding a green card quicker. I'm just going to optimize for learning quickly. So I found companies who would do this process for me, and I kept that going. And when I joined Smartsheet I was joined as a senior director, and I was at the final stages of getting my green card. They're actually surprised that I still have this visa issue. So it's like, how do you still have it? I'm like, it's a long story, but they were willing to like sponsor it back in the day. So, I'm like happy with it.
And how do you, like, I know that you coach people these days, right? How do you coach people who are not naturally like risk taking like you? Like, how do you instill that in people?
I don't think you can, right? Like either you are or you're not. What I encourage people to do is take risks early on in your career if you can. Take one risk, right? Or a couple of risks and see what happens. Join a startup, see what happens, or try to build a company, see what happens. The biggest thing people have to keep in mind is the financial security part of it, right? So as long as you're financially secure, you can do whatever you want. So one thing I noticed, especially with South Asians, is, and maybe you're seeing the same thing in your life too. It's one thing is like baked into our head is to save money, right? And I'm also like wired that way. So we save enough money, but we never give ourselves permission to spend it. And people don't realize how financially secure they are. So they might think that they're not financially secure at all, but when you talk through it, you're like, you can take a year off and still be fine. It's not gonna put a big dent in your finances. But the reverse is also true. Like some people are not aware of how financially insecure they are, and they make decisions which ended up like hurting them. But I'll say like if you take care of your finances, as long as you're financially secure, not even saying financially independent, you're financially secure. Like if you can go a year without like earning, then take some risks and see where things take you. I mean, I've tried to build startups that failed, but I learned through the process. It's like, okay, this is what it takes to build a company. This is what it takes to like raise money from an investor. Like this is what it means. Even if those ended up in failure, you learn something from that experience, and that is invaluable, right? Because you never learn it until you try it. I say that it's somewhat in jest, but it is very hard for people to take risks in general. It's very hard. People are very comfortable in what they're doing, and they just can build their life around their job and the paychecks and the community that they live in, and nothing wrong against it. But which is why, like, if you look at the difference between everybody else in the top 1%, is that they decided to, okay, I'm going to roll the dice here, see what happens. And that goes a long way. So I encourage people to take risks as long as they can safely can.
Yes, what's striking about something that I saw and read about you was that you mentioned that the right people knew your work. That's a very, what I call as a calculated approach. But how did you strike the balance between being authentic and sounding off with intent?
In terms of getting visibility in front of the right people, an easy way to do it is take on the hard tasks. When customers are complaining, you know, I would put up my hand and say, you know what, I'm going to go talk to them and calm them down. Nobody wants to do that job, right? Technically, it might not be an engineer's job at all, right? Because it's like you're engineering, like customer support can go handle the discussion with the angry customer. I would put my hands up for that. I can be on a call with you. I can explain what happened. So take on the messy stuff, right? Because it's upward leadership progression. A lot of it depends on your ability to take on tough tasks and messy conversations, messy situations, messy people. All that counts a lot. So when people see you doing that, like, okay, well, this person didn't stay quiet when they could have. They raised their hand, and that's what happened. Like that's been my practice, and even now, like when things go wrong, like I don't shy away from delivering that, standing in front of that news with customers. I don't like delegate it to my people and go, okay, you go have this conversation. I put my name out there and I put myself out there, and it's a very easy way to like get the right attention.
I agree with you. I've seen that work many times for the people around me as well as for me as well. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'm glad to hear that that's kind of the process that's used by several successful people. That leads me to a question where I want to figure out from your relationship building phase of your career journey very early, what is one relationship that kind of changed your life in the right way?
I mean, if I have to point to one thing, I would say like my wife. So that relationship, yeah, they say like say who you marry like matters a lot, and it's very true. Because my wife she like nudged me into directions that I wasn't even thinking, and they ended up becoming huge, like sort of life-changing events for us. I'll give you an example. Before I joined Amazon, so Amazon came to Boston to do an interviewing event. I don't know if they still do it, but they would go to city, try to like interview people. And I was in Boston back then. They were interviewing for roles in Seattle. I was like, okay, well, I want a job in Boston, so I'm not going to apply for it. But my wife was like, just take the interview and then see what happens. You never know, right? Even the worst case, you get the experience, right? So I applied, and they called me for the interview, and I went through the interview, and I got through. So now what, right? Because it's a job in Seattle, and my wife was like, so my wife was like, okay, um, how about you ask if they have a role in Boston, and say, hey, sir, I didn't think that I was going to get through this, but I did. So, do you have a role in Boston? No harm in asking. And if you really want this job, like, let's move to Seattle. So I was like, okay. So I asked the hiring manager or the recruiting person, and lo and behold, they had a role in Boston. So they connected me to the hiring manager. I didn't have to go through the loop again. I just had to talk to the then manager back then, and he was like, okay, yeah, you cleared the loop, so we'll find you a spot here. And Amazon opened a bunch of other doors for me. Like I wouldn't have gotten the Smartsheet job without Amazon. Without Smartsheet, I wouldn't have gotten Kajabi. Without it, so all of it kind of leads back to that moment when she said, "You know what? You should just apply. You see what happens." And like in the sort of the risks that I take, like I don't take it if I don't have her blessing, because she has a decent enough kind of radar to say, yeah, this is too big of a risk, or this is like a right size risk. And, as long as she's with me, I'll like roll the dice all day, right? And another example I'll give is so when I tried to buy an expensive car, she was like, you won't be happy with this. And she was right, because material things not going to keep you happy after like the novelty wears off, right? When I decided to write the book, there was still like you have to like invest money in it to get the book done, the publicity for it, etc. It's about the same cost as that car that I wanted to buy. And she didn't even bat an eye. She's like, yeah, this you should invest in, because this will open doors for you that you don't have open right now. And that was the right call again. So if I had to pick one relationship, I would say, marrying her was one of the best decisions I made in my life.
Excellent. I think that's quite a good personal story to share. Thank you so much for that. Mahesh, I actually wanted to talk to you about this part because one thing that struck me with you was when I was looking at your career, right? Dabbled in different domains. Like you've been in finance, you've been in crowdsourcing, you've been in Amazon, you've been in voice AI in Alexa space. So you've gone through different domains, right? Walk us through like what does it look like? Like how do you what's the mental makeup that takes from going from one domain to the other? How does it work?
Yeah. I think the one kind of personality quirk that I have is I get bored very quickly. So, if the challenges in front of me are not interesting enough, I tend to get bored. So I kind of made a decision early on that I'm going to explore every vertical as much as I can, and I'm going to explore even the kind of the distribution channels, so like enterprise, consumer, B2C, B2B, prosumer, like all those, right? So that's kind of my quirk. So I tend to like explore. But from a framework standpoint, my framework is very simple. It is people, product, and process. That's all you have to figure out. So who are the people around you? Who are the people you need to know? So your team, your immediate team, your peers, and the people above you. And then the product. What does the product do? How does the business work? How does this make money? And then the process, like what kind of processes does the company use to kind of work? Is that simple? And if you look at And every company, even though the product might be different, even though the way the company operates might be different, at the core of it, software development is software development. It's very, very standard. And doing this over and over again has kind of taught me how to quickly get onboarded. Pattern matching every company that I join and say, okay, so this is how this company makes money, and this is the distribution channel, and these are the big customers, etc. So it's in the beginning it was hard, but now I've just built that skill to learn quickly. It's about like the core of it is you can't be afraid. Is That's all I would say. You just have to be bold enough to dig in and be open to asking dumb questions in the beginning, right? And that's totally okay. Even as CTO, I would ask dumb questions, and I told people that I'll probably ask this, so don't be taken aback because I'm just trying to understand how this thing works.
When everything will feel important, right? Like when you get into a problem space, right? How do you decide what to focus on? Do you have any tips there? Like, do you index on any particular thing?
The easy way to find out is, what does your boss think? What is top of mind for them? And usually they won't tell you on day one, but by day 10, they'll tell you that this is what's keeping them up at night. Specifically, I asked two questions. One is, what is keeping you up at night? That's one question. That's most of the time people answer like honestly. Second is, if you had a magic wand, what is the one thing you would change? And I would just not even ask, not just my boss, but I'll ask my peers, I'll ask my team, I'll ask stakeholders, I'll even ask the board members, like, what do you want to see change in this company? And that'll give you a sense of what is the fire that you have to focus on, right? So yeah, it's people are pretty transparent about what's bothering them. So you just have to ask.
It's always asking the right questions and getting the feedback and calibrating based on that.
I'll take you on this path as a segue from where you left off in terms of how people react to when you provide them feedback. And the honest answer to that is just provide them and see how they react. Similarly, in that vein, you also mentioned that no one teaches you how to actually do your job. What's the biggest gap between what we think leadership is and what the demands are really?
So one of my favorite shows to watch, just as to just de-stress myself, is this show called Yes Minister. It is a very old British sitcom. Okay, so you're familiar with it. I don't know, Jay, if you're familiar with it, but it's a show about a bumbling minister who is fighting the bureaucracy of Britain. So he gets minister, but he cannot do anything because it's just like so much bureaucracy, so much like red tape, etc. And there's an episode in which they're talking about like making a change, and the minister's wife is like, "Why did like you're the minister? Like, can't you just make this happen?" And he is like, "I'm just a minister." And so what he's implying is like he cannot get anything done without getting through the bureaucracy of his team. And there's a sequel to that called Yes, Prime Minister. The same minister becomes a prime minister. And similarly, in that, somebody asked him, "Can't you just make this law? You're the prime minister." And he says, "I'm just a prime minister. I can't do anything." So leadership, a lot of time people feel that it comes with a sense of inbuilt authority. And that is true only to a certain extent, right? So you can't just go change your product quickly. You cannot go change pricing quickly. You cannot change the team quickly. You cannot change your managers. You cannot change your stakeholders, right? So it is, people imagine leadership to be you come in and you make a new rule and new laws and things will become better, right? And people will praise you for the changes you made. But the reality is, you're expected to make changes, but those changes are very hard to make because you have to be methodical about how you make changes. So, and I say like management is about managing complexity, but leadership is about managing change. And people underestimate the effort it would take to make changes the right way. Because it's like you're trying to stretch a rubber band, right? And there's a natural point in organizations when they'll break if you try to make a change too quickly or too fast. And I've seen like leaders make the mistake of, yeah, if people don't believe in this or people don't agree with me, you can just leave, right? That is not the right way to make change about, right? You have to like bring people along, and yes, there will be people who don't agree with you, and you give them a soft way out. but you're expected to make changes, but you also have to make the change in a way the org doesn't hate you. So, and that is the biggest learning that I have learned through my
Very well said. What's the most common question that you get from the people you mentor?
it's a different shapes and sizes, but the executives that I mentor, the problem they almost always have is managing up. Different questions related to managing up, like how do I manage up to my CEO, or how do I manage up to the board, or my CEO's not paying attention to me, or variations of that question is what I usually get.
Fantastic. We are going towards the end of this particular episode. And to finish this episode, we are moving into a very rapid style format.
Sure.
Quick questions, witty answers. That's kind of what we're expecting. Jay, you
Awesome.
want to kick it off?
Yeah. One skill that you think, Mahesh, is not going to be relevant in 2030 that we should all shed right now.
2030. I would say driving.
Yeah, I am with you on that.
I like that. I would love for it to become defunct.
That's right. Me too.
Biggest career myth you would like to debunk?
More money means more learning.
And the best piece of advice that never works.
Follow your passions.
Fantastic one. And if you could send one message to that average 25-year-old version of yourself, what would that be?
I would say I would spend more time writing, because I always enjoyed writing, but I got into it like later in life. But I would say, yeah, just start writing earlier.
Yeah, that comes at the end of the episode. Thank you so much, Mahesh, for this.
It's a constant struggle. So it's tough because both those things are constant. You have to be constantly innovating. You also have to be constantly investing in trust. So in the end, it comes down to investments, right? Can you make sure like the trust team has enough people? Can you make sure your core team has enough people to do like truly disruptive innovation, so, right? Like will like require sacrifices. So it just means you have to sacrifice current revenue to optimize for future dollars, right? Sometimes you have to do that. But in the end, it'll come down to, your investment thesis. Like the unique strength of humans is they can dream. No other creature on the planet dreams. So we dream and we manifest those dreams. Like currency is a dreamt up concept of like money, concept of trade, concept of all these are like, made up stuff, like humans made it up. So I think creativity is something we're innately human, at least I like to believe. So maybe in the next 30, 40 years, we'll have the, androids like this described in Blade Runner, right? They have empathy, they have emotions, they have feelings, maybe. But I think until then, creativity is a uniquely human trait. And I think that's where you should lean in, right? And figure out like how to cultivate that aspect.